Down in Petersburg, everything's fine. All them cats is drinking that wine. Drinking that mess is their delight. When you get drunk, start singing all night. Drinking wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Drinking that mess is their delight. When it gets drunk, start fighting all
Hello,
night.
and welcome to another fabulous episode of Tasting Anarchy. I'm your host, Mason Joseph, joined as always by...
Jacob Lindsay.
Yeah.
All right.
So those of you who don't know, that's the second time I've done the intro for the show.
That's right. Yeah, I think maybe early on, I think you did it once or twice, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I think one of those episodes it hasn't been released.
Oh, that's very possible. I've got several still in the chamber to be released.
I was going to say the can, but I think the chamber's even better. So,
all right.
Jake, what are you drinking tonight on this episode of Shortness and Delayed Tactics?
All right. Well, this week I chose an Italian wine. So for those of you who listen regularly, you know that Total Wine had this pretty good sale where you could get 20% off if you bought 6 bottles of European wine. And so I ended up buying 6 bottles, but then they sent me the same coupon another week later. And so I was like, well, I gotta go get 6 more, right? So, cause it's 20% off. So how am I not going to do that?
For those who don't know, Jacob and I cannot resist a deal.
Yeah, exactly. I can't resist this deal. So this particular wine is 13.5% alcohol by volume. It's normally priced at $20. So at 20% off, it's $16, which is a pretty good deal. The name of the wine, I'm going to do my best to pronounce it because it's an Italian wine. It's Leone de Oro Vino Nobile di Montepulciano.
So I know that's something the noble of like a certain region, I think.
I'm not sure, but what's interesting about this wine, and it was highly recommended by the dude who works at Total Wine. I'm not sure if he's a sommelier or not, but he was like, I like this one a lot, and it's inexpensive. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. and it's done in so it's an Italian wine, and it's made in Italy, but it's done in collaboration with a fraternal organization here in the United States called the Sons of Italy. Or it's a order of the Sons of Italy or something like that. And I put it in quotes in the notes, but later on when I was looking it up, they had a different name. So I was like, I don't know which one's the correct one. But on the back of the bottle, it says the Sons of Liberty. So this organization actually has an interesting history. They were founded in 1905 as a way to try to help integrate Italian immigrants into American society and culture. So it helped teach them like how to speak English, how to do business in America, that type of thing. And also there was a lot of prejudice back then against Italians, and so it was just a good way for them to get together. They were under a lot of criticism in the 1930s and 40s because they were very big supporters of Mussolini. And for those of you who don't know, both in World War I and World War II, there was a very large contingent of the American public who were interested in siding with the Axis. Very large number of German immigrants here, very large number of Italian immigrants here. There were some Japanese, so they put all those Japanese in internment camps.
Only on the West Coast.
On the West Coast, but for a reason, but the reason wasn't necessarily very good. But there were Japanese sympathizers, so there was some of that going on. And even in World War I, this was more so than World War II. There was a question on whether or not the United States would come in on the side of the Axis or on the Allies. And you can learn more about that, I guess, from Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Oh, yes. Very good.
Yeah, so this wine was very, very interesting. So this is the first wine that I've had where it had, in the smell, like when you first pour it, there is a smell of maple bacon. And a little bit of tobacco and mixed with red fruit, the typical wine flavors, the typical red wine, red fruit. After it sits for a while, the maple bacony smell kind of goes away. It's less meaty, and it becomes kind of more of a standard red wine. The flavor, if you drink it right away, again, it does have kind of a strong flavor of maple bacon, but after a while, it kind of mellows out. It has very, very soft tannins. It does have kind of a meatiness to it, but it's not as meaty as when it's not been sitting for a while. And but a very strong dark red fruit flavor. For the money, I think this is a very good buy, especially at 20% off.
Well, what was the money before the 20?
$20. So before so 20% off, it made it $16, or no,
18.
No. 10% would be of 20 would be $2. So 20% would be $4. So it'd be 16.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Yet again, Mason's math destroyed.
Okay. Yeah. So, so $16. And, one thing that's interesting, so I'll share this with you, Mason. I don't remember if I shared this with you. Both times I went to go get this deal at Total Wine, they had no idea how to use the coupon. And like I gave, like the first time it was on my phone. So I was like, okay, maybe they were just confused because it was on my phone. So I printed it out the second time and I gave it to them and they were like, I don't know how to add, cause I'm a quote unquote reserve member or whatever. So I get 10% off when I buy 6 bottles of wine. So for those of you, if you buy 5,000 points worth of wine at Total Wine, you become a reserve member if you're part of their club. But
which I think is $500. I think that's how.
Yeah, I think it's $500. I think it's something like that. Yeah. So I achieved that last year, and then in order to, I guess, continue that, I have to get to that point again. But anyways, so I rang up the 6 bottles, and then Victoria bought this amaretto cream liqueur, and they were ringing it up, and they were like, I don't know how to do 20% off on the wines that qualify. I was like, well, it's these 6 wines, and the amaretto doesn't count, so I don't get any discount on the amaretto, which is already showing. So you just add 10% to each of these, and so they did that, and I was like, well, no, it's not 10% of the discount; it's 10% of the total of the original price. Like, and I said it's not that much, but it ends up equating to like $1.50 or something like that. Like, how do you know it equates to $1.50? Like, because I know how to do math. I'm not retarded.
So no offense to the people at Total Wine.
Right. No, yeah, no offense to them.
I'm not working the cash register at Total Wine.
Right. So like, I'm like, you don't need to put the numbers in. You you can do 20%. You just move the decimal over 1, and then you double that, and that's 20% off. And she was like, I got to go get my manager. I was like, all right. I mean, I don't have a problem with this. I just want to make sure that I get 20% off. I don't want 10% off of the already reduced price. I want 20% off the total price. And the manager came over and he did the same mistake. And I was like, look, I understand. It's a little bit confusing because you guys aren't used to this coupon, and I don't know why your machine's not taking it. But when you put an additional 10% off of the discounted price, then
it's like, look, guys, I get 30% off. Just
right. Well, finally, the guy was, because I bought the amaretto, and I think I had also some more wine saver, vacuum saver things, and because I wanted to be able to open 4 bottles of wine, and so he was like, I'm just going to give you an additional 10% off everything. Will that work? And I was like, I'd have to do the math, but I don't really want to stand in line anymore, so that's fine. And then I did the math in the car, and it ended up being like 40 cents more. So I was like, I got the deal. But
because you don't value your own time.
Exactly. I don't value my own time. But and it only ended up it was only like a 5-minute exchange, really. But I was like, how?
I'm sure they got you out of there very quick.
They did. And
every interaction I've had at Total Wine has been very nice.
Yeah, they're actually really great. So, but this wine, I think, if you guys, it doesn't seem like there's a shortage of it, and it does seem like it is one of the ones that they promote for Italian wines. So, if you have an opportunity. Oh, I didn't say the type of grape it was. It's 90% Sangiovese and 10%. Oh man, I'm gonna have to look it up because I don't remember now what the other one was. But it was 90% Sangiovese and 10% something else. And
here's the thing, folks. Jacob will put it in the show notes.
I will. I'll put it in the show notes. So
tastinganarchy.com, and then hopefully we managed to post the show notes on this. So I'm going to do my best to get the Podbean to be posting on the blog from now on. Jacob, here's my promise to you. You and I will figure this out by the end of February.
Yes. Yeah. So
if it costs money, I'll pay for it.
It won't cost. I don't think it'll cost money. I think I just have.
I'm just saying, if it does, we'll get it done.
Right.
Don't worry.
But if it's not on the website, and you guys really want to know, you can always go to Podbean and search for Tasting Anarchy, and it'll be in the show notes on the episode on Podbean.
Well, here's an even better way to do it. You can reach out to Jacob on Twitter at tastinganarchy@twitter.com, or you can email the show, tastinganarchy@gmail.com. Or if you really want to make it like super meta, you can message Birdarchy or Card Campit and ask them to ask us on Twitter.
That's very
They
meta.
are the Friends Against Government, also known as the Fags. Yeah. And if you really wanted to get meta, you could reach out to Nikki P with Sounds Like Liberty and ask him to ask us.
Right. There we go. Or ask him to ask Bird to ask us.
To ask me. And I have no idea how to contact me.
All right. So, Mason, that kind of covers my wine. I think it's very drinkable. If you guys were to eat this with pizza or just cheese or any sort of, kind of hearty foods, I don't think you could go wrong with it.
Well, I don't think we're done yet.
With this wine?
Yeah. So soft tannins kind of has I thought at one point you said meaty, but I think it was meaty. Like meat, like a steak, meaty. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the color like on that?
It's now, one of the cool things about Sangiovese is, it does have a very, very dark skin. And so for those of you who are new to wine or just don't know this in general, one of the things about red wines is that very often the color doesn't come from the inside of the grape. It comes from the fact that the grape is allowed to ferment with the skins.
Yes,
and
they're usually pressed and fermented with the skins.
Yes, and this is what imparts the tannicness to it. So a tannic note or a tannic texture to wine is that texture that you have when you drink a very strong cup of black tea and your mouth is smacky. It's very dry feeling. It's sticky.
Yeah, you can experience this personally by taking a red grape and peeling it. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
The flesh of a red grape is very sweet and grapey, but if you eat the skin by itself, and a green grape sometimes too, it's a different flavor, and you kind of realize when you eat them together, it's oh no, that's what I assume with grapes. It's no, that's the skin. Mm-hmm. Most of that flavor is the skin.
Yeah, well, and in this case, Sangiovese, so it has a darker inside, but I believe it's still a kind of a white fleshy color. There are some grapes that have a black fleshy color, but and those are ink black wines. But this particular wine, it has a really nice. It's very, very dark, and then along the edges, it's kind of a dark leather color. So it's very pleasant looking. The aroma, as I mentioned, very pleasant aroma. Mm-hmm. Even though it's been sitting out now for quite a while, it's still... It doesn't have that bacony smell anymore. It's not as meaty, but it does still have that very pleasant red wine, dark red fruit, like plum, maybe overripe dark red cherries. That kind of smell to it. It also has that sort of flavor to it. But the high tannins, the high acidity, and that over fruitiness, it's something that I think goes very well with pizza or hamburgers or basic kind of quintessential Americana type food. That it's heavier, it's greasier, it's more.
It's kind of like the food would coat your tongue, and the tannins will help release that coating.
Exactly. Yeah. So I actually was eating this earlier with chips and salsa. Not the worst combination ever. Not really specifically a great one, but it was a very spicy salsa. So I thought that with the thick kind of umami of the tomatoes and mushroom, because it was that kind of salsa where it's mushrooms are chopped up in there also. So it was the umami flavor from this is very foodie, I guess, but from the tomatoes, it's kind of has a little bit of savoriness, the savoriness from the mushrooms, and then it was a special type of salsa that has caramelized onions also. So really good salsa. You can get it at Kroger. It's and then the saltiness from the chips, and then along with this, so you're eating something spicy, then you drink this, and that kind of tannininess and the acidity kind of strips that down. So you're eating a spicy chip, you drink a glass, and it's every time you're clean, kind of. It's a really great combination.
Very palate cleansing.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, and I can see how with a heavier, fattier, cut of meat, a steak. Kind of we used to get at men's nights where they would be kind of, more fatty. Yeah. Where that might not be as good because it strips too much of the carryover. Whereas a Cabernet may linger with it. So yeah,
it's very good. I like it a lot. So I think that's the conclusion. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the conclusion of the wine. What are you drinking, Mason?
So as a throwback to some of our newest segment on the show, the monthly beer recap with Jury. I'm drinking
Can I pause you real quick?
Sure.
You always pronounce Jory's name Jury, like a jury for court?
Yes, I do. But I do it. My cousin has the same name.
Yeah, it's Jory, Jory, but as in like Marjorie.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's the thing. I always mess that up. So,
I know. I noticed that you did it last time, and I was like, well, I don't really care if he messes it up, and I don't think she cares either. But I wasn't sure if you didn't know.
But I do care. I didn't know I was doing it. But when you say it, I knew immediately. I always do it, and I mess it up with my own cousin's name.
Okay.
So
all right.
Jory, who is our beer correspondent, which is funny given that both you and I wouldn't say we outstrip your sister in beers.
Well,
beers consumed.
Well, you and I have very, very different taste than her. Actually, you probably have a closer taste, like palate for beer than I do.
Well, your sister likes the European, so she's very close to those soap pops, which neither one of us really like.
Yeah, neither one of us really likes it, which is interesting. But I thought that was interesting. But she gets a lot of samples now, so she may have a wider sampling than we do. But I don't know if she has as much drinking as we have. But who knows?
And that's the thing is, like, I did a lot of sampling at Grape and Gourmet where, like, I would just buy unless I knew specifically I wouldn't care for it. So I am drinking my all-time favorite beer. This is a beer that when I saw it in Total Wine, you and I ask favors of each other as in, like, hey, can you give me a ride to the airport on your way to work? Yeah. Kind of those sort of things. This was literally like, hey, this is out of your way going home. Can you go get me this? Because they won't sell me another one of this. So I'm drinking a beer I found over 10 years ago. Now, this beer has not been aged 10 years, but I've been aging this beer for actually before you left, quite possibly before you left Virginia.
So it might still be one of the ones I bought you?
Quite possibly. Wow. Quite possibly. Because I ended up buying a year's worth, and I'm drinking one per month. Okay. So this is Dogfish Head, which is a Delaware-based brewery, 120-minute IPA. So this is an IPA that they continuously hopped for 120 minutes. So for those of you who have access to Dogfish Head, if you've seen the 60 or the 90-minute, this is the one that goes beyond it. So the 60-minute is a standard IPA, which is an India Pale Ale. So here's another thing I do a lot. Mm-hmm. It's India Pale Ale, not Indian Pale Ale. There's no N on the India part.
I bet you and I probably talked about that before, but I don't. I think I always say Indian Pale Ale.
No, 100% honest, I don't think we've ever talked about that before.
Maybe, okay.
I make that mistake continuously. So India Pale Ale. So they have the 60-minute, which is a standard IPA. And then they have the double, which is the 90-minute. Well, the triple is the 120-minute. So Founders, which makes my second favorite beer, which is Breakfast Stout, used to do Devil Dancer, which is a triple IPA. And then in Virginia Beach, Reaver Beach Brewing, and I'm drinking this out of a Beach Brewing glass, which was the original name of the company. Yep. They do the Kraken, which is a triple IPA, but they cap both of those companies, Founders and Reaver Beach, cap it at 10% alcohol. Dogfish Head does not cap the alcohol percentage in the 120-minute. And in fact, it was illegal in Virginia for a while because it could range. And on their website, they say it does range from 15 to 20% alcohol. So it's a 12-ounce bottle that could be 20% alcohol. Mm-hmm. This is and you've had it before, Jacob, and
I have.
Do not care for it.
No, it's not my favorite, no.
Yeah, it is a highly alcoholic and highly bitter and acidic, and bitter for me and acidic kind of go along to each other, beer. It is, and I hate to say it this way, if you've ever been hyper dehydrated, that's the color, your urine color, that's the color of this beer. Yeah. It is very floral. It is like IPA on just insanity. So this beer at Total Wine, when you can find it, usually is $10 a bottle. They sell it in 4-packs, so it's about $40. So, I did a little math, 12-ounce bottle, so 750 milliliters, standard bottle of wine. Usually, that's about 25 ounces. So this is like half the size, half the volume. Yeah. For about, if like you did the math, this is like a $30-something dollar bottle of wine beer, as you'd say. So your sister was talking about the Duchess de Bourg is how I pronounce it. Mm-hmm. And I think your sister is pronouncing it much more correctly than I do, which is a Flemish red.
Oh, yeah, she likes that.
Yeah, it's a very good beer. That one comes in about 10% usually, and maybe it's a little less than that. That was the closest beer that I could find to 120 minute when I first had 120 minute, because Grape and Gourmet had 120 minute, and they were selling it less than $10 a bottle at the time, 10 plus years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Bought one, and I was like, this is amazing. How do I get another one? They're like, you'll never see another one. And then, somehow 10 years later, every time I found this, I bought it, and found it at Kroger, which was crazy. Found it at Total Wine. But this is my absolute favorite beer. Mm-hmm. But it is super alcoholic. The last time I got not sick from drinking, but was just kind of like, I don't know if I want to drink anymore. I had 2 of these.
Yeah.
And I was like, I finished one and I was like, hey, Ashley, my wife, put another one in this glass. And I drank it warm, which this is a beer that's this beer, because it's so oily almost in the, I mean, you've had it, Jacob, so it's kind of hard to describe, but
it is hard to describe.
Yeah. Like most IPAs, you really can't get them. Like, if you could freeze an IPA, like, that would almost be too cold. But the point where, like, it would burn your tongue being, because, they usually have a higher alcohol content, so usually harder to freeze and kind of would hurt you if you got them cold enough.
Right.
This is one of those beers that, like, when you have it cold, it has a specific flavor. When you have it mildly warm, it has a specific flavor. When you have it warm, just straight from the house warm, like most wines should be roughly served, it has a specific flavor, and it's always kind of a variance in between those. Mm-hmm. But that other time I had like 2, and I was just like, nope, I have made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
So,
well, I remember.
And what's super funny about this beer is it has a very plain label. It's just got kind of like a hop kind of on it, and it's a plain background, but it has a neon green cap that I've always loved. So now, real quick, the reason I'm drinking a beer tonight is Jacob and I thought we were going to have a guest on tonight. Ended up not working out. Hopefully we'll have her on and maybe next week, and then you guys will see the magic behind the show as we post them. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to introduce the wine series that I got for my birthday before that. So I'm drinking 120 Minute, which I've managed to ramble on for like 10 minutes on. But
I'm going to continue the ramble on because I don't remember if you recall the first time I had this, because you had you had this without me
quite a few times. Yeah.
And then you brought it to who we lovingly call Weird Nate, not Nate Classic, who's been on the show, but the other Nate, who was also my roommate. We brought it to his birthday. And we also got him like a sorghum organic beer or something like that.
Yeah, because he
was really into organic sorghum stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember you brought this for you and me. Mm-hmm. And I opened one, and you opened one, and I took a sip, and I was like, I don't think I can drink this. and you were like, it's really good. And I was like, I'm going to try, but I really don't like it. And I think I had like 2 or 3 sips of it, and I was like, I just can't drink it. And you were still nursing yours, so you were like, I think you should probably pour it out, even though it's expensive, because I don't think I can drink 2. But I like it so much that I would drink 2.
Yeah, and it's funny because I had forgotten that story. I thought you were going to tell the story of Matt buying you a 4-pack of this.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, he did. He bought me a 4-pack, and I was like, that's so nice of you. It's so terrible.
To me, it seems like, it's almost like if you didn't know you didn't like sushi, or you had just found out, like somehow I had just dragged you to sushi and somehow convinced you to eat raw fish. And then, it's like your 3rd or 4th date with your wife, and she's like, oh, you're going to love sushi. This is going to be the best. And you're just like, I care for you so much, but this is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth.
we went to sushi today, and we were having that conversation because we go to sushi almost every week, and I really don't like sushi, and so I always get like yaki udon or some sort of teriyaki or stir fry or something like that. And she got some sort of like salmon tartare. And so I actually do like raw salmon. The thing that I've discovered that I don't like about sushi is the seaweed. So I'm actually okay with most of the fish. It's the seaweed that I can't. It's too strong of a flavor, and I just don't like the flavor. But
You might like sashimi then, which is just the rice and fish.
Yeah, and I occasionally will eat that. The thing that irritates me about sashimi is that I always have to ask them, do you have that tiny piece of seaweed that ties it together, or is it really sashimi where it's just the piece of fish and rice? And if it's got the tiny piece of seaweed, I'm like, I don't want it. And,
yeah, because the seaweed can definitely taint things.
Yeah. So she had this salmon tartare, and I had like 3 or 4 pieces of the tartare because it was done in like chunks instead of minced. And I was like, this is actually really good. I would order this as my own dish. And except for it had, you know how on the fish eggs, I only like the orange fish eggs. I don't like the green fish eggs, and I don't like the red fish eggs. So
I know those exist. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, so this one on top was garnished with green, orange, and red. So I ate some of the orange ones, but I didn't want the red or the green. And so, and then I ate like underneath some of the salmon tartare. So it's like very, very picky when it comes to fish stuff. But yeah, it was very funny to me because she loves it so much, and she'll eat it, and she's just like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, and that's what was always so funny to me is like, and you know, maybe it's like an Eastern European thing where it's not that Eastern Europe doesn't have access to fish. You know, they do Black Sea and those kind of areas. But like, you know, you grew up in Central California, which really isn't far from the coast.
No,
like,
it's not.
Geographically, you know, maybe produce-wise, or not produce-wise, but like food production-wise, it could be. And, you know, I grew up in Hampton Roads, which huge fish, you know, availability. And like, you know, I really enjoy fish. And Ashley, my wife, is from the Central Valley in California, loves fish, you know, fresh and, you know, salt. And then like you were just like, nope.
Well, you know, my mom has actually talked about this a little bit, not on the show, but in general, is my sisters actually like it, but she never cooked fish because she doesn't like it, and it was also expensive because even though we were 2 or 3 hours away from the ocean, this actually really goes to show you how much trade has changed in our lifetimes. Is getting fresh fish from the Bay Area to El Dorado Hills in California used to be, even when I was a kid, was not a cheap thing. So fresh fish was expensive.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it economically doesn't make that much sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
El Dorado Hills had a very low population compared to Stockton or Sacramento, which, you know, you know, was it an hour at most?
Well, I mean,
from
like
El Dorado?
The graduating class of my high school was only 1,000 people smaller than my town was when I was a kid. So yeah, it does make sense. And now, granted, there was larger towns not too far away, but
but like that's the thing is like it's different when you're talking about Suffolk, compared to Hampton Roads.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's an hour on flat land at most. El Dorado Hills is in the hills. Like, I haven't been there, but like those small communities, you really have to have that commitment of order to get it. You know, like I totally understand. And even then, like, you know, it's not like that, like I don't make, you know, you and I both, it's not like we don't make, you know, we're not working at McDonald's.
Right.
we do okay in life.
Yeah.
I still look at fish prices and I go, nope, not getting fish. Like, and I love fish and like, I'll eat, you know, it makes good fish. Like you know, every fish dish my wife's ever made, I've enjoyed very much. But like, I'm just looking at fish and I'm like, yeah, not for that price.
Right. Like, Well, you know, I've been buying Victoria fresh salmon lately because she just likes it. But you can get half a pound of salmon for like $6 or $7 if it's on sale, and that's pretty good. But
not here, and I hate salmon. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. So she likes fresh salmon a lot, and we can get it here, but it's usually Atlantic salmon, which is probably farm raised, and
which is better than Pacific. A lot of the Pacific ones. So
she likes the Atlantic salmon better, and I guess supposedly there's less like heavy metals and stuff like. I really don't know, but
less parasites is one of the other things too.
Okay. All right. But yeah, so. I mean, on the fish talk or whatever, it's just interesting when I like I've been rewatching X-Files lately when I'm at the gym. So like it's interesting to see like just when you and I were kids how different the world was compared to now.
Oh, like I look at my daughter and you know, she's 2.5 and I think like how different the world's going to be. Like, and you know, just not to be egotistical about it, but like how different our children are going to be provided for.
Oh yeah.
By just those advantages our parents gave us. And like how different, like how different is the world when, like how different is David Duchovny's life, making X-Files money back when the X-Files was big.
Yeah.
Compared to now, like that's the type of measure I'd like to see. Like how different is Bill Gates' life? Because people talk about like, John D. Rockefeller and, those guys where it's like they didn't have indoor plumbing.
Right.
And, some of the poorest people in the world have indoor plumbing or can experience indoor plumbing. Like they could, like the poorest people in Mumbai can go to the Mumbai malls and crap in indoor plumbing.
Right. Well,
John D. Rockefeller couldn't get to it.
Right.
He's the richest guy in the world.
Well, and things that like that John D. Rockefeller could have died from where it's now is just the poorest person can go to a free clinic or can go to the emergency room and just be like, not on my dime and get antibiotics or whatever. And antibiotics didn't even exist back then. So.
Exactly. And that's the, like that's kind of the craziness of it is like, I mean, if you want to think about it truly, you and I are talking and we're 1,500 plus miles away.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to get $1,000 bill from this.
Right.
Like this is not going to cost us any money.
Well, that's interesting because speaking of long distance calls, Victoria and I have been listening to this book about, basically it's about persuasion. And one of the examples they give in there is, what's the guy's name who flew across the Atlantic Ocean? The first Lindbergh. So it was about how he convinced people to give him the money to buy the plane to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. And so part of his like convincing them was to set up a long distance phone call, which back then was a huge deal. And just when I was listening to that, I was like, that's really interesting because you and I can talk across the country for free in a conference call if we want, and with multiple people who are in multiple parts of the world for hours for nothing, for free, and
in every day continuously.
Yeah.
And it's not bad quality. So one of the things that like really dates movies is when they, people are talking about your long distance service.
Yeah.
Do you remember when your long distance service was different than your household phone provider?
I do. Because we used to call Ronnie Sue, and who I told, if you guys go back to the Halloween episode, you'll know the story of coming back from Ronnie Sue's house.
Two good episodes. Yeah. Like she's come up multiple times.
Yeah. But there was it cost us money to call Ronnie Sue. And so we would try to call her and keep it like down to like 5 minutes. So we would call her and be like, hey, we're going to come up. And she'd be like, oh, great. What time are you going to come up? We're going to come up on this time. Okay. Great. I'll see you then. And then that was it because it cost so much money. And, I think it was like $1 a minute or something. It was
back when $1 meant something.
Yeah. When $1 meant something. Exactly. Like nowadays it's like whatever, but we would always be very conscious of the area code. Actually, if you go way, way back, I remember a time when we didn't have area codes, and then they instituted them, and we would get that sort of like the area code or the phone number you're trying to dial is not in this area code. Please hang up and press 1 in the area code. And I remember when they started instituting that in my area in California, because it used to be that you just called a number and it just kind of knew, and it was always a 7-digit number. And then later on, when we called Ronnie Sue, we'd have to dial 530 and then whatever her number was. I don't recall the whole number, but then and at the time,
that'd be crazy.
Yeah. But I remember her area code was 530 because ours was 916. And we started having to put in her area code. And my mom was explaining it to us. They were like, yeah, they're doing this new thing where you have to put the area code in. You can't just dial the number straight. And because she would always let us call Ronnie Sue when she was going to talk to her. But it was long distance. It was always long distance. It was, even though she, didn't live that far away, but long distance used to be just, an hour away. That was long distance.
Yeah. And here's the two things there. I don't remember, I think the area code was always a thing in Hampton Roads that I remember.
Okay.
But I remember when our area code changed to the 757.
Oh, really? Okay.
We used to have I forget what it was, but we had something like that. But so you were saying you guys were 916. Did you know the Raleigh area code is 919?
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me. This is one of those things where I don't know if it's a government bureaucrat who came up with this or if it's the phone companies just came up with this on their own. But I always wondered about why the area codes weren't sequential in area. and as you get older, you're kind of like, well, yeah, it makes sense that like they differ. So there isn't as many crossing, so like the 919 is right next to the 563 or something like that. So it's a clear distinction.
Okay, so
But,
I just looked it up because it's really funny. So if you look at the map for the 916 area code, it's basically just like Sacramento and like a little bit of the area around it. And then if you look at the 530 area code, it's like all of Northern California besides where I lived.
I was going to say it's like half of California.
Yeah, it's huge. It is a huge area. It's crazy. But I mean, it's like the population in Northern California, it's all centered around Sacramento. And then when you get out of there, it's like
nothing.
A couple 100,000 people. Yeah, it's not that much.
Well, it's like the 757.
Yeah.
Like, that's Williamsburg to most of the Eastern Shore to the core of Hampton Roads.
Yeah.
Like, it's huge. But so we haven't called people to here to listen to our antics. So
rambling about area codes.
Yeah.
What are we, Kevin Smith?
So to give a historical perspective, today is the day of the Super Bowl. So Jacob, did you know I was born on the Super Bowl?
Oh, I had no idea. No.
Yeah. So back in 1987, for those of you who were born in the 90s, F you. No, we appreciate all listeners despite their age handicaps. No, again, but so back before the Houston Texans joined the league, the Super Bowls would happen in January. When they added the Texans, they had to basically add another full week to the season, kind of how the math works out. So that's why you have February Super Bowls.
Okay.
So it's the Super Bowl week. Now, competing in the Super Bowl are the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. So one of the things that many people know, but many people don't seem to freaking get, is that most stadiums for professional athletes in the United States are paid for by the cities or municipalities that host the stadiums, like through bonds and other things like that. And these things are, like the Jerry Jones one in the Dallas Cowboys one used to be the most expensive stadium ever at like $1 billion or something like that. And, that wasn't built, as far as I know, with private money. And then, so Los Angeles, who's been playing at the Rose Bowl, as well as the San Diego Chargers, who have moved up to become the Los Angeles Chargers, have, they play at like the Rose Bowl, which is like a 40-year-old stadium, but it holds an insane amount of people. It's very, very large. It's very old stadium, but a very pretty stadium. And, it's Southern California. And basically you can play all year long. It really doesn't get that cold by comparison to pretty much anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
But the Los Angeles Rams owner is building a new stadium that's $5 billion, but it's a very large complex, and it's gonna have office space and everything like that. But he's doing it with no funds directly from the municipality that the stadium is located in, or the state of California, or Los Angeles County, any of that. It's all private, which is very rare for these stadiums. And one of the funny things about it is an article on fee. And, Jacob and I discussed this a little bit before the show, that fee kind of has a weird thing where like articles seem to post and then disappear after a while. I had to Google to find this one, even though I literally just read it this afternoon, where they were talking about the stadium and like, they fee because we're anarchists. So, they were talking about, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, there is some money that is going to, for the sales tax that's going to happen inside of the stadium, is somehow going to go back to the owners to cover some of their costs. It's like, yeah, it should. There should be no sales tax. But what's very funny is so what's really interesting about this is the Chargers are going to rent the stadium for $1 a year. But that means instead of having 12 or something like that home games a year at the stadium, they're going to have 24, which is exceedingly rare for stadiums because most NFL teams don't have a sister team in the city. And most of the time, they don't split the cost of the stadium with anyone else. In fact, last year's game was played in Minnesota. In Minnesota, they sued the Professional Soccer League and to stop the city from allowing a professional soccer team to play in there in the season when football wasn't happening.
Okay.
Then this people of Minnesota had to pay for another stadium for professional soccer. Now, I don't know about you. I would understand professional soccer being very important in Los Angeles or maybe even Texas, where, high Hispanic or Latin American and South American country migrants who would attend the games. I don't know if that Minnesota stadium's ever full for that professional soccer team.
Well, I mean, this happens quite a bit, and actually local to you, there's been a lot of issues with the scope, and that they have a very difficult time filling it any time that hockey is not going on, and also filling it when hockey is going on. Because even though, like, I'm a big fan of the Admirals, as you know, there's just not a lot of demand for very minor league hockey.
No. And that's the thing, is like the scope isn't even like over 20,000 people.
No, and it's not a big stadium. It is actually a very modern stadium, though, because they had to refit it in order for the AHL team to come play there, and then they lost the AHL team, and now they're back to ECHL, which is 2 tiers below NHL hockey.
Yeah.
But it's a very similar problem. They're always trying to figure out what to do with it, because they can like put boards over the ice, and they can make it kind of like a convention center area, but it's just not really conducive to a convention center. It's just kind of a weird building, and for ice hockey, it just happens to be that they're not really that convertible. They're best to be converted into a basketball stadium.
Yeah, because the one of the things that people don't really understand about them is there's no directional focus.
Yeah.
If you think about most concert venues, when you walk in, you're directed to the stage.
Right.
And that's where you look. Whereas, like, I saw Kid Rock play there back in the day, probably a year and a half after he released his cowboy song.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a fantastic show, but they literally had to like build like fake curtains to kind of keep the stands for people from wanting to sit behind the stage.
Right.
And kind of give you some place to look.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of it's just an odd shape. And like, I went and saw Bob Dylan there. I think probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe a year before you and I met, or maybe the year, actually it could have been even the year you and I met.
Huh.
And, he was on there. I can't remember the album he was promoting, but I like Bob Dylan a lot. And but it's interesting that didn't come up on Sounds Like Liberty. You guys can look that up and hear what the music I like. But I do like Bob Dylan.
If the Sounds Like Liberty guys are listening, reach out to Jacob. I would love to do the show too.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will message them just to remind them that you're available. But I went and saw him, and it was sort of the same thing. They had to put like weird background curtains up to make sure that you were on one side, and then even they blocked off that part of, how you can like walk that circle. You've come to an Admirals game with me a couple of times.
I loved going to those.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun, and you walk that circle during intermission, or not intermission, but during the period breaks, and get a beer or get fries or whatever you want to get, But
terrible food for you. Delicious.
It is delicious, but it is terrible for you. But they block off always the side where you can try to enter behind the stage. And so it ends up kind of interrupting the flow. So it's kind of weird. Now, they've done a better job of it, I think, here in Dallas. I live down the street from American Airlines Stadium, which is really, really a really cool building. But they do the Mavericks games, and they do the Dallas Stars games there. And then they also do a lot of concerts and things like that. And they do the way that it's set up, I think they probably kept that in mind, where they were like, it's strange to set it up this way. So it's very, very, very vertical. And when they cut off a portion of the stadium, it doesn't interrupt the flow of the outside portion of the stadium, because they can lock the doors and block them with like little cages. And so you can still walk all the way around and not have to worry about people trying to get into the wrong doors, because it's like a cage is down, and it kind of makes that flow work better. And then because it's a very, very vertical stadium, all of the seats have a very good view, even though the ones that are high up are further away technically, but it's still a very good view. There's nothing obstructed, so it's interesting. But kind of going back a long time ago with you and me, probably a year or so ago, you and I talked about another publicly funded stadium, not a privately funded stadium, in Sacramento, the new Golden One Center, which I don't remember the numbers exactly, but this is kind of to your point that they're usually partially publicly funded. or majority publicly funded and then partially privately funded. And the private funding usually comes from somebody who is looking for advertisement. And the Golden One Center is in conjunction with a number of other inner city rejuvenation projects in Sacramento, and all of which are funded by Golden One Bank or Golden One Credit Union, and which is a California bank. It's fairly large, and they funded this in conjunction with Sacramento, and I think that Sacramento is paying something like $255 million. And then the Kings are contributing like $73 million, and then the bank is contributing something like $58 million. So basically, the majority is going to be funded by the state. Whether or not you can, or maybe the city, whether or not you can actually go to those games or you care to go to those games. I like the Sacramento Kings, so when they come here to play the Mavericks, I want to go see them. But whether or not you care about that NBA team, you're still going to have to pay for that as a resident of Sacramento. And very likely, if it's in California, or really most of the United States at this point, very likely it's going to be funded by some sort of inflationary loan or debt, some sort of debt. And so it's very interesting to see that somebody is trying to do it privately, and I wonder if it's a principled stance, or if it is was just too many.
The reason the St. Louis moved, because it used to be the St. Louis Rams, moved to Los Angeles, was they couldn't get the city of St. Louis to pay for the stadium. So just so people know, most of the reason that you lose a professional team to another city is the fact that the hosting municipality wouldn't pay for the playing venue that the team uses. That's the reason they move most of the time. Now, there are some that go defunct, and then, you purchase the rights to be the Houston Oilers or, something like that. But yeah, most of the time they move because the other people wouldn't pay for the right to fund $1 billion stadium or something like that.
Because they can be. I mean, even this smaller basketball stadium in Sacramento ends up. I think the total was almost $500 million. It was for $391 million. So, I mean, it's kind of insane. But I think
not kind of.
Yeah,
there's
it
no
is.
Kind of.
It's crazy. But I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Because
I think so as well.
We're running a little bit low on time since we started a little bit late. So, do we want to do the plugs one more time, Mason?
Yeah. So, I will plug our two favorite podcasts that are at our level. Take that, guys. The Fags, Friends Against Government, Bird Archist, and Card Campit. Hopefully, I will be able to enact my plan to have Card on the show, where we will try his specialty drink.
Yep.
And then Sounds Like Liberty. Those guys had Jacob on, Nikki P and his wife Lizzie. Both of them are like us, where the guys on Sounds Like Liberty, or not Sounds Like Liberty, but Friends Against Government, they are definitely libertarian anarchists. They have a huge focus on that, but they're into the fun culture. So I will quote two podcasts that I don't know if Jacob ever listens to. Last Podcast on the Left, or Sophie King podcast. Both of those they have a topic most of the time, and those topics usually end up being serial killers or just weird, terrible events that happened in the past. But they kind of, like the Fags, they have like a theme. And most of the time, they somehow tie it to liberty, which is always wonderful. And Sounds Like Liberty is purely awesome music stuff, and wonderful liberty in between there. And how can people pay attention to us, Jacob?
Well, they can check us out on Twitter at Tasting Anarchy. You can also, if you'd like to email me directly, I do keep an eye on the email, and it is tastinganarchy@gmail.com. You can also go ahead and check out our website, tastinganarchy.com. Mason and I have committed now to trying to figure out the show posts so that they will automatically go there by the end of February. So look forward to being able to check out the show there and the show notes.
Now, I will throw one request for fan interaction.
Yep, okay.
Two. excuse me, whatever platform you listen to us on. We know there's got to be something like, half a dozen of you guys out there. Rate and review if you can. Give us no stars, but a wonderful rating, or a wonderful rating and no review. But that helps us, be seen and talk too. But, oh goodness me. So Jacob and I have an idea. Do we need a Facebook page for the show?
Oh, yeah.
Or would a Reddit group or a Reddit thread be more appropriate and to your guys' liking? Best way to tell us, Twitter, as Jacob said, Tasting Anarchy on Twitter, or tastinganarchy@gmail.com. Let us know, guys.
All right, so I think that covers it. From me at Tasting Anarchy, stay free. Mason?
I will say stay free as well.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Have a good one, guys.
Oh, give me some of that slop. Oh, pass that bottle to me. If you want to get along in Peterstown, buy some wine and pass it around. Age runs up to 49. All them cats, they love sweet wine. Drinking wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Hoy! Wine, wine, wine. Elderberry. Wine, wine, wine. Cherry, cherry. Wine, wine, wine. Blackberry. Wine, wine, wine. Port and sherry. Wine, wine, wine. Oh, pass that bottle to me. Now down on Gill Street at Willie's Den, he wasn't selling but American gin. One soldier wanted a bottle of wine. He hipped that cat for $1 and a dime. Drinking wine for you to drink wine. Wine for you to drink wine. Wine for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Now I got a nickel, have you got a dime? Let's get together and get some wine. Some buys fifth and some buys fourth. When you get together, you're doing things smart. Drinking wine for you to drink wine. Wine for you to drink